Hi everyone, good evening. Welcome to our P5 exam preparation webinar. Today we are going to share some tips and strategies to help you experience success in your exams. Before we start, I just want to make sure everyone can see and hear us. So if you can, just give us a little thumbs up in the reactions, using the reactions button. All right, thank you, that's great. All right, before we start, I just want to tell everyone a little about the Eton Academy. So the Eton Academy is a subsidiary of Eton House International Education Group. We actually offer English, math, and science enrichment for children from nursery 2 all the way to primary 6. And the reason why the Eton Academy was started was because we've heard from our graduates that they miss how they used to learn with us when they were in preschool. And so the Eton Academy was set up so that we can continue supporting their learning as they progress to primary school in a way that they enjoy, and at the same time helps them to experience academic success in primary school. So with that, I'm just going to start. Before I start, I just want to let you know that if you have any questions, you can just talk to us through the chat. Okay, and we will collate and respond as and when throughout the session. Or if we are unable to respond, we can get to those questions at the end of our session. Yeah, so right now I'm going to start. I'm Ting, and I head the math department at the Eton Academy. Today, I'm joined by Charis, our head of teaching and curriculum, who will be speaking to us about English. And I'm also joined by Wykit, who will be speaking to us about science. Right, now we are going to look at mathematics first. So before we start, I would just like to offer a little perspective to everyone. So now we are at the end of term 3, and then we are going to have a long weekend because it's Teachers' Day, yay! And then after that, we're going to have a 1-week break, and we are going to start term 4 with another long weekend because our P6s will be sitting for their PSLE listening. And my dear P5s, in exactly 1 year's time, that's going to be you. Are you ready? And if you're not, here's where we start. Okay, so please allow the 3 of us to help you with your preparation for your P5 end of year examination. And hopefully we'll be able to help you through the next 52 weeks until it's time for you to sit for your PSLE exams yourself. So let's start with our math preparation. So for mathematics, I'm going to talk about the math paper that you are going to be sitting for and how we're going to revise and some exam strategies that you can use during the examinations. Okay, so allow me to talk about the math paper. So the math paper is broken up into 2 papers. Okay, you're going to sit for both papers on the same day. Okay, paper 1 is made up of multiple choice questions and short answer questions, and it's split into 2 booklets. Okay, there are 15 questions in each booklet, and the questions can be 1 mark or 2 mark questions. For the multiple choice questions, besides answering the questions, you also have to shape an OAS. Okay, so make sure you shape as you go. Please don't try to finish the whole paper 1 and then at the end try to shade your OAS in a rush. You might make a mistake or you might even run out of time. Okay, so the advice that I would like to give all of you is to shade the OAS as you go. Okay, and then for the short answer question, okay, we see that there are 1 or 2 mark questions. This means that there are marks awarded to the correct answer and there are also marks awarded to working. Okay, so it's important that as you attempt booklet B, you need to show your working. And besides getting you marks, okay, the working also supports you in your checking so that you have something to look through as you check. You know how you arrive at your answer, and then if you have some time, you can even check your computation. All right, so that's paper 1. You have MCQ and SAQ split into 2 booklets, and also more importantly, you do not have your calculator for paper 1. So you still need to be able to do your computation without your calculator. And then in paper 2, it's focused entirely on word problems. There will be 17 word problems, and they can range from 2 mark questions to 5 mark questions. And in these 17 questions, in each question, only 1 mark is awarded to the answer, which means that if you get all the correct answers without any workings, you will only get 17 out of the 55 marks allocated to paper 2. So it is crucial, absolutely crucial, for you to show your working for all these questions. Okay, and remember how we discussed that working helps you in your checking. Okay, so in paper 2, you have your calculator with you. Okay, so in your paper 2, it is not necessary for you to check your calculation every step because you use your calculator. So what is more important for you to be checking in your paper 2 is that your answers make logical sense. That when it's supposed to be a whole number, for example, number of children or number of buses is a whole number, and that it fulfills the criteria described in the question. Okay, so for your paper 2, make sure you show your working and make sure you check your answers with logic. Finally, in paper 2, unlike in paper 1, in the answer blank, you will not be given units. So you need to make sure to include your own units in your answers. Otherwise, you will be penalized. All right. So if we have no questions about the format of the paper, I'm moving on now to how we are going to revise. Okay, so for our revision, okay, we need to take note of topics that were covered in primary 3 and primary 4. Okay, this is because these topics were taught when you were in primary 3 and primary 4, and they will not be revisited in primary 5. However, they are still very popular in the P5 exam. So it's crucial for you to make sure you've gone through these questions, especially when you were working on your practice papers, so that you know how to answer them in the exams. Okay, some common topics from P3 and P4 that will reappear in your P5 paper are factors and multiples, angle, symmetry. Okay, so the list is here. And something else that you need to take note of is these questions will not appear the way that they did in the P3, P4 paper. They may be combined with P5 topics. For example, area and perimeter may be combined with ratio. Okay, time may be combined with rate. Length, mass, and volume may be combined with decimals, and then you need to know how to divide with decimals or multiply with decimals. Okay, so they will use questions and concepts from these topics, but they will test it in a more complex manner. Okay, sometimes they don't even need to combine it with any of the P5 topics and still make it complex. All right, so now I'm going to show you an example. So here I have a question. Okay, so we have a few identical cards placed in a straight row at an equal distance apart. Okay, and you are to find the distance between the first and the second card. Okay, so before I move on, is this concept familiar to you? Okay, those of you who say yes, it's familiar, why don't you take a guess? What is the name of this concept that's being tested in this question? Okay, a little clue is that it starts with I. Okay, I'm just gonna wait maybe 2 seconds. Okay, I'm gonna give you the answer. Okay, so when we look at this question and then we think about how we're gonna answer it, we know that it's an intervals question. What's an intervals question? So if I give you an example, check out my fingers here. So I have 5 fingers, and in my 5 fingers, there are 4 intervals. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then when I put away 1 finger, there are 4 fingers and 3 intervals. And then 3 fingers, there are 2 intervals. Okay, so in the concept of intervals, we see that the number of intervals is 1 less than the number of objects that we have. But is that all we need to solve this question? Okay, so now I'm going to show you some solutions that students have submitted to me, and you can tell me what you observe about these solutions. All right, so let's have a look. So let's look at this first answer. So our classmate, our friend, took 78.95 divided by 9 and got this answer. 8 and 139 or 180. What do you guys think of this answer? Any thoughts? Is this the answer that we're looking for? So actually, thank you. Okay, it's not, because when we take the total distance and we divide it by the number of intervals, okay, that's how we did it in P3 and P4. But in this question, we see that we are given the width of each card, and the width of each card is 6.5 centimeters. And so there is an added complexity in this question that we do not see in P3 and P4, because in P3 and P4, we're given a balloon or a pin or a lamppost in which we ignore the width of those items. Okay, but in this question, we can't do that. So we have to take into consideration the width of the cards and remove it from the total distance to be able to find the distance between two cards. Okay, so taking into consideration my feedback, this is what my student did. Okay, the same first step, and then they take away 6.5 centimeters from their first answer. So what do we think about this answer? Is this finally the correct answer? So it's not. Okay, thank you. So the challenge that they face in this answer is, even though they took away 6.5 centimeters, when they divide it by 9, they are assuming 9 cards and 9 intervals. So then they've missed out actually the last card. So the width of the last card is still included in this 2 and 139 out of 180. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the solution. Okay, and then if you have your calculator with you, you can start pressing away and see if you can get the answer. Okay, and for your information, this is a 3-mark question that we took from a school paper. So you can use your calculator for this because this is from paper 2. So here's our solution. Okay, so first we have to find the total width of all the cards added together, remove that from the total distance before we are able to divide and find the distance of one interval. Okay, and like I mentioned, the units are not provided to you in your paper 2, so you have to make sure that you include it on your own. Okay, and in paper 1, if the units are given to you, please do not give your answer in your own units. Okay, you have to use the units provided. All right, so this is an example of how a concept that we learned in P3 and P4 can be made more complex in our P5 paper, where they add more details that you have to pay attention to, and they use decimals to make your computation a little more complex. Right, now we're going to look at something else. Okay, so the next thing we're looking at is exam strategies. So this refers to how you are going to address the questions or address the paper when you are sitting for your exam. Naturally, this does not apply to you only when you are sitting for the exam, because these are habits that you need to start cultivating now so that you know what to do in the exam. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that right now. So first of all, like I mentioned, you have to show your working. Okay, showing your working helps you to check, and it can help you get some marks even if your answer is incorrect. Okay, so you can get partial marks. All right, so make sure you show your working, and even if you have no idea, do not leave it blank. Okay, you're in P5, you can do this. You know 4 operations, and there will be numbers in the question. So make sure you try, show your working, okay, and use it to help you check when you come back to the question later on. So that's the first thing. Okay, start cultivating the habit of showing your working now. The second thing that you need to pay attention to is time allocation. Okay, in your paper 1, you have 1 hour to complete the entire paper. Okay, a useful guide that I would like to share with you is you need to complete all the MCQ questions, 15 MCQ questions, within the first 25 minutes, because you need slightly more time for the short answer questions. Okay, so make sure you complete the MCQ within the first 25 minutes. All right, for paper 2, make sure you complete questions 1 to 5, because these are the 2-mark questions within the first 15 minutes. Adhering to these guidelines help you to stay calm in your exam, even when you do not know how to answer the questions, because you know that you have managed your time well and you do not need to rush. All right, and so this is like when you're preparing for your 1.6 NAPFA run. You don't go on the day of your NAPFA exam and run your 1.6 for the first time. You have lots of opportunities to practice before that. and you will know how fast or how slow you need to go. Because if you go too fast in the beginning, you'll be all burnt out by the last round. Okay, but if you go too slow, you might not be able to finish in time. So cultivate the habit of managing your time well as you are working on your practice papers, so that you know how much time you need to finish or how fast or slow you need to go in your exam. Okay. The next thing that I would like you to pay attention to is how you answer the questions, how you tackle the questions. Okay, so when you look at the questions in your paper, especially in our paper 2, where we have 17 word problems, there's lots of information given to us. Okay, to address the questions, you first have to identify the topic the question is from. Is it from ratio? Is it from fractions? Or is it from area of triangles? Or is it from weight? Okay, so thinking of the topic helps you recall the concepts that you have learned and the formulae that you need to address those questions. For example, if you think of area and perimeter, then you know length times breadth, or area of square is length times length. Okay, so that's the first thing that you need to think of, the topic. Afterwards, you need to think of the word problem types. Okay, and this refers to the key concepts or the strategies that you've learned. For example, at P3, P4, we have assumption, and then we at P5, what do you guys have? Any ideas? Some constant difference, one item constant, equal stages. I hope all these sound familiar to you. So those are strategies that you need to think of that will help you address the questions. Okay, now let's look at an example. Okay, so here I have a word problem. Okay, and there's a lot of information given to us in this word problem. Okay, so we see rectangles A and B, and then triangles C, D, and E, and then they form a big square. Okay, a big square here. And then we are also told that the total area of the 2 rectangles A and B is the same as the total area of the 3 triangles, sorry. And then the ratio of the area of A to the area of B is 7 to 3, and then ratio of C to E is 2 to 8, and then the area of the square is 324. But they want us to find A and D, but they did not give us a ratio for D, so there's not enough information. Okay, so when you see a question like this, okay, the first thing that I need you to do is to stay calm. Okay, so like I said, let's identify the topic. What topics do you see in this question? Okay, just a quick one, type your answers into the chat. Okay, if you see any topic that's even remotely familiar to you, you can just go for it. Okay, yeah, thank you. So we have ratio. Yep, anything else? Area and perimeter. Okay, so the area and perimeter equivalent of your P5 topic is actually area of triangle. Yeah, thank you. So let's see. So we have those 2 topics. Okay, we've identified the topic. Okay, and then we need to orientate ourselves. So we know area of triangle, so we know half times base times height, and then we see ratio. We know that we have to use equivalent ratios, make all the units the same, etc. Okay, so those are things that we will be trying to do to answer this question. Okay, and then remember to make use of what you have in the question. Okay, and then you can start. So here's what I have for you. Okay, so I know that A to B is 7 to 3, and then C to E is 2 to 8. So now how did I get 10 here? So when I look at this rectangle, okay, I see that C, D, and E form a rectangle. And the base of D is actually the length of the rectangle, and the height of D is actually the breadth of the rectangle. So D is actually half of this right side rectangle, which means D will be the same as the total area of C and E. So 2 plus 8 will give me 10. So I know that D is actually represented by 10 units. The area of D is represented by 10 units. Okay, and then this tells me that the total number of units that represents the area of the right side of this square is actually 2 plus 10 plus 8. That's going to be 20. And then A and B are supposed to be identical. So that's also going to be 20. So A and B represented by 20 units, CDE represented by 20 units. Okay, now I have to change the ratio of A to B so that there's a total of 20 units. Right now I only have 10. So how to change 10 to 20? Okay, you need to times 2. All right, so we will take 7 times 2, that's going to give us 14, 3 times 2, that's going to give us 6. So we have 14 to 6 to 2 to 10 to 8. Okay, so from here, we know the individual number of units representing each of these shades, and we know that the number of units representing the total area is actually 20 plus 20, so that's 40. So we know 324 square centimeters is represented by 40 units. From here, you can find 1 unit, and using 1 unit, you will be able to find the area of A, the area of D, and answer the question. Okay, so identifying the topic and getting familiar with the formula and the concepts that you need to know is important in helping you address the questions. Okay, and the way that we are going to practice this is after you have revised your file and your workbooks, you've corrected the questions that you need to correct, the mistakes that you made previously, you can answer all those questions now. That's great. Okay, but the thing about those worksheets and your textbooks is that it tells you that today we are working on the topic of area of triangle, today we're working on ratio, today we're working on equal stage, we're working on gaps and difference, etc. But in your exam, you can be dealing with 12 different concepts at once and not be told what those concepts are. And so to prepare for that, what you need to do is to look through the papers and not necessarily answer every single question. You can just do like a brain exercise where you look at the question and you identify the topic and you talk through your solution. So it can be 15 minutes, the night before your paper. You don't have to go through the intellectual strain of addressing the whole paper. You can just say, oh, this question is from rate, or this question is from average. I just have to find total and then divide and stuff like that. Okay, so there is a simple exercise that you can do, okay, to identify word problems type so that you are prepared to do that in your exam. All right, okay, any questions? No questions? I'm just going to move on. Okay, so let's see. All right, so now let's try this question out. And this question is really fun for me because when I was going through this question with my class, my students told me that they see this in their English paper. And so this is very easy for them. They just have to read and then find the evidence and they will know whether or not this is true or false and or not possible to tell. Okay, and then I was shocked because that's not how we answer this question in mathematics. Okay, in mathematics, to answer such a question, we have to come up with our own mathematical proof or evidence that tells us whether or not each statement is true, false, or not possible to tell. So you can't infer from the information given. Okay, you have to put some numbers together and work out the answer. All right, so we are told that Eric, okay, his average marks for his English, Math, and Science was 75. And then when we add Chinese into the mix, the average becomes 60. So using this information, we have to work out whether or not it is true that Eric actually scored 75 marks for his science test. Okay, so 10 seconds, think about it. Okay, I'm going to count to 10 in my head, and I'm going to tell you the solution. So are you guys ready? So how? True, false, not possible to tell? Part A, okay, if typing the whole thing out is too much work, you can start with T, F, and N, okay, for the 3 options. Okay, so some of you are saying not possible to tell. Okay, let me think. Yes, that is the correct answer. Okay, so how do we know that it's not possible to tell? So when we are told that the average is 75, okay, it means that the total score is 225 of the 3 subjects, okay? Find the total, we will take 75 times 3. And this means that the score of these 3 subjects can be any combination that adds up to 225. It could be he's got 1 mark for English, 1 mark for Math, and then 223 marks for his Science. Or he has got 100 for English, 100 for Math, and 25 marks for his Science. Okay, so any combination of 225 can give us an average of 75, which is why it's not possible to tell what mark Eric has scored for his science test. Okay, now let's look at statement B. He passed his Chinese test since the new average of 60 was above the passing mark of 50. Okay, so what do you guys think about this? False, okay, anyone else? Any other thoughts? Could be true, right? Because 60, 60, 60, 60, okay. Okay, so now, as usual, you can't tell by reading the information, okay? We have to work it out. So let's look at the mathematics. Okay, it's actually false. Why is that the case? So let's use this first piece of information, 75 times 3 from statement A. Okay, and then we are going to use 60 times 4 from the question. Okay, because we know average was 60 for 4 subjects, so the total is 240. When we had 3 subjects, it was 225. When it was 4 subjects, it was 240. So it means that when we remove the 3 subjects, we are left with 15. And that is the mark that he scored for his Chinese. Okay, so it's actually false. He did not pass because he scored 15. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share with you today. And if you remember nothing, here's what I want you to remember. Okay, so your practice papers and mock exams are great opportunities for you to revise your P3, P4. Okay, because those topics are no longer covered in your P5 curriculum or syllabus. Okay, so you have to pay extra attention when you encounter these questions. Okay, and also now it's very important for you to show your working, because this helps you to check and your working can get you marks. Okay, and if you feel overwhelmed by the question, there's so much information, the way to help yourself in the exam is to first identify the topic that this question is from, and then identify the concept. Okay, and cultivating the habit of managing your time will help you stay calm when you are stressed or when you do not know how to answer a question. Okay, because then you know how much time you can spend thinking and when you need to move on. All right, and finally, if you have time at the end of your paper, okay, but not sufficient time to check all your calculations, a really good way is to check your answer with logic. So like I mentioned, if the question says give your answers in kilometers, please do not give your answers in liters, okay, or a random decimal, okay. And also for logic questions, like how many children are on the bus or how many cars are on the roads, we can't have decimals in those questions, okay. So those are some ways you can check your answers with logic. All right. So that's all I have for you. Okay, if there are no questions, I'm going to just hand over to Mr. Su right now, who will talk to us about science. Okay, Mr. Su, please.
All right, thank you, Ms. Tan. Yeah, thank you for sharing about math. So I'm now going to take over with sharing on T5 science, how to revise the subject, some tips, maybe perhaps in terms of answering techniques. I'm Mr. Su. I've been teaching science for the past 9 to 10 years. Hopefully today's sharing will help you a bit along the way with your preparation for your exams at the end of the year. Okay, now without further ado, let me share with you some of the content for today's sharing. I will first talk about the breakdown of the science paper, and then I will also further share with you the list of topics that you're supposed to be tested on before moving into how to tackle each booklet. So we'll talk about booklet A first, using an example, multiple choice, before moving on to booklet B, which is, I think, why some of you are here today, because most students struggle more with the open-ended booklet. Yeah, and I will end, right, by wrapping up with some revision strategies for you guys. Yes? Now, so about the science paper. Ever since 2014, the science paper itself didn't change too much in terms of the topics that are tested. The whole paper takes 1 hour and 45 minutes to finish, and you must finish both booklets A and B within the time limit. Now, if you look at each booklet, booklet A has 28 questions. It used to be 30, now they reduced it to 28, but the key thing here is each question carries 2 marks. So that adds up to 56 marks out of 100. And then the remaining 44 points, right, would be distributed across 12 to 13 questions in open-ended format. Okay, now, just to warm things up a bit, for the participants today, right, I'm gonna use mostly just the emojis, the reaction buttons, right, to vote on things. So for this particular slide, I want to kind of warm up with the question of, how do you tackle this science paper when you first open up the booklets? Do you tackle booklet A first or booklet B first? Which one is wiser? If you choose booklet A, can you pick the thumbs up sign? And if you pick booklet B first, can you pick the heart emoji? Okay, I want to see like what you guys pick. All right, thank you for sharing. If you are the ones that pick booklet A first, I think that's a really good move. Okay, that's because each question there carries 2 points, and you want to begin tackling the paper with the freshest of state for your mind, right? Because these 28 questions can come from any topic under the sun for science. So you want to tackle them, and it's just an MCQ. That means you have a chance of getting correct 1 out of 4. So try your best, score full marks if possible for booklet A before you move on to booklet B, which has way more variability. And if you start off with booklet B first, you might end up risking not having enough time left for doing the questions in booklet A. And doing it in a rush is not a very good idea. Okay, now, next one. Here is the full list of topics for the entire subject of science. By the time you reach P6 next year, okay, these are all the topics you need to study for. But let's just focus on this year's. Yeah, for P5, up to this stage, you would have covered more than half of this list over here already. Okay, and you notice that this list is way longer than what you had for P4 and P3. Okay, not only are you studying more topics, each topic actually is harder and has more content as compared to your previous lower block years. Okay, so this is why it makes P5 much tougher. And therefore, my advice to you, start your revision really early. Okay, you are not only going to prepare for this list of topics in P5, you're also expected to know everything from P3 and P4 as well. So spread out your time properly, give yourself enough breathing space to catch up on each and every one of them. Yeah, now let's move straight into booklet A. What I've listed here for you guys is basically my 3 main advice. Number 1, read every line carefully and highlight all the clues. I know this has been like a nagging thing since, I don't know, when you began science in P3, all your teachers say the same thing. I think they say the same things for a very good reason. This is solid advice. You must and you should do it, okay? So that you don't make any careless mistakes. Now, number 2, try to be efficient, save time, right, on booklet A. If you can use the elimination method, which I will share a bit later on, do it, okay? And last but not least, avoid assumptions. Now, what do I mean by assumptions? You're going to see that example later on too in my example here. So, we've got a question from 2017 PSLE paper, okay? Now, Ali conducted this experiment. So have a look at the setup first. You've got a basin of water at 25 degrees Celsius, and in it is a container made of material P, and within that container, you have a hotter liquid Y at 90 degrees Celsius. Yeah, this person measured the temperature of that liquid Y over time, and then swap it again with another material Q. Then you got this result, the graph over here. And you're told that he wanted to bring some hot food and some cold drinks for a school trip, and he wanted to keep the hot food hot, the cold drink cold. Which materials to choose? So let's vote. Yeah, I want to see what you guys pick. If you pick, okay, 1, just type 1 in the chat. 2, type 2. If it's 3, type 3, and 4, type 4. What do you think is your choice for this 2017 past year question? I see 1s in the chat. Any other variations? No? Okay, the people who answered 1 are really good. Thank you, Ms. Tan and Ms. Sim. Yeah. The math and English teachers have spoken. The correct answer is 1. Okay. Now, if you are not certain among the audience today, and you were actually thinking about answering 2 or 3, that is the part that I need to address, because just let me guess what your thought process was. If I have cold drink and hot food, which are clearly 2 very distinctly different things, 1 hot, 1 cold, I should pick 2 different materials. If that was your thought process, then you have made an assumption over here, and you didn't apply your concepts properly first. So let me help you break things down for this question. Okay, as usual, I would have highlighted all the important clues in the question before I ask myself a very important question: topic and concept. Which topic did this question come from? What sub-concept within that topic it's related to? So this particular one, I'm sure most of you would know, right? It's from a P4 topic of heat. Don't stop there. Out of all the heat concepts, this is related to conductors of heat, right? About keeping food warm, keeping food cold. Now, once you know that, okay, then you can start looking at this more accurately. Okay, now I know that liquid Y is hotter and is surrounded by a colder water. Therefore, there must be heat loss traveling from within the container outwards. Okay. The issue is, which material is a better or poorer conductor of heat, right? How do I read the graph given to me? So let's focus our attention on material P first. I asked the question over here: is material P a better or a poorer conductor compared to material Q? Again, let's do some voting. If you pick better, right, can you give me a thumbs up? If you pick poorer conductor, can you give me the heart emoji, please? Okay, a quick 1 second or 2. All right, thank you guys. Yeah, so if you pick poorer conductor of heat, you are correct. Now, some people are still struggling with graph reading, especially when I have more than 1 line in a representation over here. So if I'm looking at 2 line graphs between P and Q, if I get a gentler slope, a slope that is less steep, it means that things are gentler too. The changes that it's experiencing, right, is slower. The heat loss over here is also slower. So this tells me that material P is the poorer conductor of heat because it's causing heat loss to go very, very slowly compared to Q, right? Now, then I apply that concept, knowing that P is the poorer conductor. Hot food, I need it to lose heat slowly. So I need to pick a poorer conductor. Immediately, I'll eliminate 3 and 4. Apply the same concept again on cold drinks. I need to slow down heat gain for the cold drink. Again, it's a slow thing. It's a poorer conductor. Same concept, eliminate Q. And I end up with only 1 option left, which is number 1. So that's how you tackle MCQ questions. Avoid assumptions, use your elimination technique. Okay. Now, booklet B. For advice. Okay. Read, highlight all clues, same as just now for MCQ. You can't run away. Identify the topic after that. And then what you need to do a bit differently is to, okay, now that I know the topic, I need to also recall keywords that are linked to the concept that's tested. Once I've got some keywords in my head, I might even want to jot it down at the side first before I plan the flow of my answer, right? It should be clear and logical, yeah, with all grounds covered. Then you will score your full marks. Now, let's try looking at a past year question over here too. This is an experiment-based question, and it requires you to explain your choice based on the results of an experiment. So what's this experiment about? You've got 3 materials, PQR. You've got a 50-gram weight dangling on each material, and then you're supposed to measure the distance D here. Okay, and here are your results. Once you got this result, there's a separate situation given to you. Okay, I have S hooks over here, right? And clearly they're used to hold objects. In this case, it's a keychain. Which material, PQ or R, is the most suitable for making this S hook? Explain. Most students, I would assume, right, would have no issue picking the right material. So in this case, if I'm asked to use an S-hook to hold heavy objects, it should not bend under the weight of the object. So I should pick the material that is 0 in terms of distance D, right, which is material R. Now, here's the problem with most of the answers that I get from students over the years. The immediate answer would be, oh, material R because it's the least flexible, or it is not flexible at all. You're not wrong. Concept-wise, you can argue that you're totally on the spot on, but you won't get the full marks because I need you to cover all these aspects. So here's an answering technique that I always teach students, and I hope today you also take down notes for this. I call it the 4 C's or 3 C's, depending on the kind of question that you get. The optional C is the first C over here, your choice, right? In this question, they ask you to make a choice first. So state your choice, material R, okay? Then comes the important 3 C's, your clue, concept, and conclusion. So the mistake I did just now was straight away jumping from my choice to the concept, because I want to flaunt and tell the teacher, hey, I know what this is about. I know it's about flexibility. Let me tell you it's about flexibility. But we tend to forget the claim, or rather the clue that led us to that conclusion. How come we know that it's not that flexible? Because based on the results, there wasn't any change in D at all. Therefore, right, material R is the least flexible. And as a conclusion, let's not forget, we need to link the story back, right, all the way to the hook. So tell me the function of the hook as well. Only with that, then you can score your full marks, all right? So take note of these 4 C's. Let's move on to another situation where the 4 C's also would apply. Now, this is an application question from 2019, question 11. Okay, you've got Alice and Beatrice in an air-conditioned car. They are wearing the same type of spectacles. The only difference is Alice was putting her hands over her spectacles, whereas Beatrice did not. When they got out of the car, right, less fogging happened for Alice on her spectacles. Explain why. So if I did the same highlighting and everything, and identifying topic, I would know that this is from a P5 topic of water. And to be more specific, it's not just any process under the topic of water, it is condensation. This should occur to you quite quickly, quite immediately, in fact, right? Now, the next thing, okay, I've got the concept, I've got the topic. I would want to find the keywords needed. So for this particular concept, condensation, I usually have a mnemonic for it. Very confident, cool leopard can dance. And you've got a really cool picture over here of a leopard so that you can remember better. Now, each letter here represents a keyword required for condensation. Water vapor comes into contact with the cooler surface of the spectacles, losing heat, condensing to form water droplets. Only with these keywords will you score marks for condensation. But let's not stop there. There's another crucial thing about this question. Notice that you're comparing two people. Both have fogging. It's just that one has less fogging. Why? So you need to also figure out what's so special about Alice. Alice was touching her spectacles. The surface of the spectacles was meant to be cool, but it now gained heat from the hand, turning hotter. So you have less condensation happening. And therefore, breaking down the flow into 3 C's again, give me the cause. The spectacles became less cold because of gaining heat. Give me your concept, throw in all your keywords, using comparative words, less, and then conclude. With this, you can score your full marks of 2 points. All this effort just for 2 points, but it's necessary. Yeah. Now, to wrap things up a bit, okay, after all my sharing, remember, you should complete booklet A first. You should aim to complete the booklet within 30 to 35 minutes. This means that you should spend around a minute or slightly more than a minute for each question, max, so that you give yourself enough breathing space, enough room to tackle comfortably booklet B, and give yourself some buffer to check your answers. Yeah, don't miss out any pages, especially for booklet B. Some people assume that there are only like 12 questions, but sometimes it can get to 13. Do not miss out questions that have no lines for you to fill. Sometimes they just ask you to circle the diagram, right? and you need to circle as well, right? Now, for revision, remember to cover these things in this particular flow. I get a lot of students who straight away jump into practicing past year papers from schools, which is step number 5 over here. You need to ask yourself first, have I studied all topics and I remember all the facts? I remembered all the name and labels? Have I understood the concepts across topics? Have I remembered keywords already? And do I know my answering techniques well enough? Only when you cover the first 4 points, then it makes sense to tackle past year questions, right? If you just tackle without doing the 4 things, you're wasting your effort. You're going to make very basic mistakes. You're going to miss out on opportunities to learn from the past year paper. Okay, now after you've done all these past year papers, of course, you will make mistakes, compare your answers to the model answer, and then learn from those mistakes and avoid committing them. Okay, that's how you should revise. Now, concluding things, I have broken down the list again, from the early part of my sharing into these 2 main categories. Some topics are what I call the factual topics. All you need to do really is to make sure you remember the facts really well. Remember the names of the parts, remember the function of the parts, and you should score pretty easily, right? I'm talking about plant systems, human body systems, and so on. Whereas there's a few topics up to P5 that are more abstract. Those are the ones that are typically challenging for students all across the board. These topics need more practice and application. That's the part where you need to refer to past year papers and try your concepts and apply them there, okay? So do more practices on these topics after you have understood the concept, of course, and I think you should be ready to go for your exam. Okay, that's all the sharing I have for you for science tonight. Thank you very much. Hopefully it's helpful for you guys. I'm passing the baton to Ms. Charis.
Hi everyone, I'm Charis. I head the English team at the Eton Academy. I'm very happy to be here sharing some tips that I hope will help you for your year-end exam. Okay, so let's get started. I'm looking at the breakdown of the English paper. Okay, so before I go into all this, at P5, through all your weighted assessments for this year, you may have already started to sense that, wow, things at P5 are getting quite tough, getting quite difficult. Another thing to take note of for the English paper is that very likely it will be the first time that you're sitting for the full English paper at the end of the year, paper 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it can feel like an uphill climb because you can see in total there's actually 200 marks, right, that you will be assessed for. But again, we are here to assure you not to panic. Your fundamentals are there. You have been studying for this since P1. So let's just keep calm, okay, and let's just keep in mind what your teachers have been teaching you all these years. So first new thing that you're going to encounter in the P5 English paper is this new component called situational writing. Okay, so writing now is a whole paper. It's called paper 1. There will be situational writing, composition writing. The good thing about situational writing is that even though it will be new to you, if you've tried it before, and very likely you have, it is not very difficult. Right? So I'm here to remind you about the fundamentals and to encourage you to aim for the full 15 marks, which is very possible. Another thing to take note of would be that composition writing is now worth 40 marks. In paper 2, vocab close MCQ, new component is now worth 5. Visual text increase in the weightage is now worth 8 marks. Editing, compre close, all increase in the number of marks. Comprehension close is the one where you have no helping words. It's 15 marks, not the easiest. Synthesis also 10 marks and compre 20 marks. Right? So I'll be going into some of these in more detail later about how to tackle them. So for paper 1, for situational writing and composition writing, okay, the total time for the paper is actually 1 hour and 10 minutes. And personally, I would recommend that students take about 15 minutes for the situational writing, so that you have 55 minutes for the composition writing. And I'm curious to know, for those of us here, what is your strategy when you tackle paper 1? Would you typically go for situational writing first, or will you typically start with composition writing first? So if you're comfortable, feel free to share with me in the chat. Okay. whether or not you start with situational writing first or you start with composition writing first. All right, thank you very much for sharing. So from my experience, situational writing, like I mentioned, is actually quite straightforward. If you can get that out of the way, that would be better. Then you have the rest of the time to focus on composition writing. I think some of you may be concerned that, well, I want to start with composition writing first because it's quite difficult and I want to make sure that I get it right. And I can see, the logic in that argument. At the same time, if you get a bit too caught up in writing your composition, because there is no limit on the number of words, you can write a really magnificent and long story if you want. If you lose track of time and there isn't enough time to tackle the situational writing, you are losing out on a very easy 15 marks that you can score in 10 minutes. Usually you can finish that component. So this is my personal advice. You should do whatever you are comfortable with, but my personal advice is to start with the situational writing first. Okay. And to discuss that a little bit further, okay, we have 15 marks for situational writing. It's broken down into 6 marks for content and 9 marks for language, right? Typically in the bullet points, that will tell you what exactly are the 6 marks that you need to address. Most of the information is actually found in the graphics, in the speech bubbles, where you have the characters talking. So as long as you're conscientious and you keep track of every single mark, every single point that you're supposed to address, that's a guaranteed 6 marks for you. For 9 marks, as long as you write in the correct tone, use appropriate, expression, good sentence structures, no grammatical or spelling mistakes, that's also almost a guaranteed 9 marks that's there for you. So please be confident, be courageous, tackle this first and aim for that full 15 marks, right? Okay, for composition writing, okay, this is now worth 2020, total 40 marks. How do you do well in composition writing? All right, so let's talk about the content first. This is a question from a Taunan P5 paper from last year. The title is Overcoming a Difficult Situation. Right, looking at the 3 pictures, we have someone clutching their head in distress, with a pile of papers in front of them, with a mark that says, "Don't give up." And then we have a classroom setting with children and with the teacher at the front of the classroom. Okay, so when you're thinking about your story idea, first and foremost, think about whether or not your story is about overcoming a difficult situation. That's the most important thing, and that will help you score content marks. Okay. The other thing would be the instruction says your composition should be based on 1 or more of these pictures. So obviously your story must refer to at least 1. Some of us might be very creative and just from 1 picture, you can spring forth, a really good idea, right? So maybe some of you are looking at the card that says "Don't give up," and you can immediately think and flesh out the whole story in your mind. And that's wonderful. If you want to base your story on only 1 picture, my advice would be that you really make sure that you refer to the picture and at least a few times in your composition. All right. So it will be really risky if you have the idea in your head, but as you are writing, you forget to mention the mark with the words "Don't give up." That could actually cause you to fail. All right. The content portion of composition. So make sure that you refer to the picture, I would say, at least 3 separate times throughout your story. All right. And also, it's okay also if you want to use all 3 pictures. I think this compo question set by Taunan is not too difficult. I think all of us can see how all 3 pictures might string together, all right, to write 1 story, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some other schools might set questions where the pictures are more abstract and not clearly linked to one another. In that case, it is not wise to try and mash all 3 pictures into 1 story. In fact, using all 3 pictures obviously doesn't help you to get a better score, right? The examiners are looking out for whether you use at least 1 picture and whether or not your story is coherent and relevant to the title. Okay. There are always a couple of bullet points in the question. It's very important that you address these plot points in your story. Moving on to language. Does one score well in language? I'm sure that your school teachers have taught you a wide variety of writing techniques. Here, I'm going to remind you some of them, and these are actually some writing techniques that we teach our students here at the Eton Academy. Right? So, show not tell. This is where you describe the emotions of a character through their words and their actions rather than just stating a feeling. So you see the boy here on the left, rather than just saying that he was very sad or he was very frustrated, you might say something like he clutched his head in despair. So I'm describing his action instead. Okay, the man with the tie looks very angry. Instead of just saying he was very angry, you might say he's wagging a finger in your face. Someone else who's very upset, you might say that she clenched her fist, punched it into the wall in frustration, things like that, right? So you describe someone's words and actions instead of just stating the feeling. But the positive emotions, you can tell that the people here are all very happy. How can you tell? One person is jumping for joy, another person is punching the air in triumph, raising their fist, grinning or beaming from ear to ear. So again, we are describing their actions rather than just describing the feeling. When describing a setting, okay, it would be useful to think of the 5 senses. Depending on the setting, you might think of sound. So in a classroom, if it's very noisy, if people are discussing, what will you hear? The chatter of the students. If it's very quiet because everybody is taking a test, then you would not really hear anything. You would just see students hunched over their desks. All right. If the story takes place in the park by the ocean, you might describe the pristine white sand, clear blue waters. If your story is in a hawker center, in a canteen, you might describe the delicious aroma of food. All right. So the senses depend on what setting you are describing, and this makes it come alive, reader. So in summary, the checklist for the list of success criteria for composition writing. Does your story address the theme and pictures? Does it follow the narrative structure, the story curve? Does it refer back to the theme, your conclusion? So at the end, you might want to use very similar words to the title to signal to the examiner that your story was addressing the title. So overcoming this difficult situation helped me to become a stronger person. Okay, and you use a wide and appropriate range of vocab and writing techniques. So let's move on to complete open-ended now. All right, some tips to share. Give complete answers. If it's 2 marks, make sure it has 2 points. Lift, rephrase your answer. Identify the question type, meet the requirements accordingly. Okay, identify the tense marker, answer in the correct tense. Please check for spelling, especially for language questions. So I'm going to demonstrate to you now how all of these are typically met when you try to answer an open-ended question. So before that, what's the difference between direct and inferential questions? If you come across a direct question and you try to source for the answer in the passage, you realize that most of the time you can find the complete answer. But if there is an inferential component, this means that as you are looking at the passage, you realize, can only find maybe 1 piece of evidence or 1 point. This typically means that the second point needs to come from you. You need to infer. And what does that mean? So let me just demonstrate that for you now. All right, so based on this PSLE past paper, what does the nickname The Brain tell you about Brian? Based on lines 13 to 20, explain why this nickname was appropriate for him. So 2 marks means 2 points. First thing, please highlight the keywords. So we would pay attention to the brain, pay attention to lines 13 to 20, and then pay attention to the fact that it's worth 2 marks. So if you look at the passage, lines 13 to 20, what's happening here? There's a character called Brian, who is nicknamed The Brain. He's speaking and he's talking about how, oh, we cannot paint another angsana tree in time. What if we just project its image onto a white screen? It will take just a few minutes. So the context is a bunch of children in the student club needed to get a picture of an angsana tree up on stage. It was destroyed and they are brainstorming what to do now. So how do we answer this question? All right, first step would be inferences usually require you to tap on prior knowledge. That means what do you know from before, or common sense, right? What does the brain mean? And actually, this is not hard. The brain refers to intelligence, refers to probably someone being quite smart, all right? And that is actually worth 1 point. an accurate inference worth 1 point, you need to link it back to the passage, right? So when we look at lines 13 to 20, what's happening here? Brian is giving suggestions about how to solve a problem, right? How do we package that together to fully answer the question? The nickname, the brain, suggests that Ryan was intelligent, 1 mark. He was able to suggest solutions to solve the problem of the missing backdrop, another mark. Now pay attention to how this second part does not lift. Lifting would mean that I copy and paste directly what Brian is saying here in the dialogue. So no, that will give you no marks, right? So you need to express in your own words what he's doing here. He is suggesting solutions, right? So this will give you the full 2 marks required. Let's move on to synthesis now. Okay, so one typical question type at P5 that stumps students would be transformation questions. So if we look at this question, Nicholas was hungry, he did not eat, in spite of his blank. It's quite evident, I think, that there's one word here that we're supposed to transform, okay? And you have to know what is the form and how to spell it, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and share with you. That word is hungry, okay? And we are supposed to transform it to the noun form, which is hunger, all right? So the answer is, in spite of his hunger, Nicholas did not eat. You notice that you have to add a comma here also. Another thing that I want to point out is some schools now are quite smart in setting questions like that because they put the pronoun his. This forces the student to have to transform hungry to hunger, right? What do I mean? If the question is the more typical form, which is just in spite of, some of you have already learned this shortcut, right? To use the phrase, the fact that, right? So it would say, in spite of the fact that Nicholas was hungry, comma, he did not eat. Most schools will accept that, all right? But to truly test your ability to transform the adjective hungry to the noun form hunger, they will then put that pronoun his, so you have no choice but to answer it this way, okay? So just take note that this could come out, so you need to be familiar with the different types of word transformations. Another very common question that doesn't stump students but causes them to lose marks, direct to reported speech. So the question is, did you water the plants today? Steve asked his sister. Steve asked his sister blank, all right? So for my students, I teach them the acronym TPPT, tense, pronoun, place, and time, right? When you go down this list, you would be able to circle the correct words that you're supposed to transform. Did, you, and today. So what's the answer? Steve asked his sister if she, so you is changed to she, had watered. So this is typically the one that students stumble over. Did is in the past tense form. We have to transform it to past perfect tense. So you need to add the word had watered the plants that day. Today is changed to that day, right? So you have to pay attention to all of the TPPT to make sure that you have changed the words successfully. Right. So one more type of question to review, to revise, phrasal verbs and collocations, right? So this particular vocab question, all right, you will see that all 4 options are actually phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are verbs that are made out of a verb and a preposition. So take in, take to, this is the verb take, in is the preposition. When the preposition changes, the meaning changes. So take in has a different meaning to take to, and so on. So when you're looking at the question, the clue here is responsibilities, right? And the phrasal verb would be to take on responsibilities. If you realize that you're not very familiar with phrasal verbs, then I urge you to look at resources that compile different phrasal verbs and collocations to revise, right, before your English exam. In summary, my success tips for the English paper: for composition writing, content, please write a relevant, logical, interesting story. Language, use a wide variety of techniques and vocabulary. Complete, give complete answers, 2 marks, 2 points, do not lift. Identify the question type, identify the tense marker, check for spelling. Synthesis and transformation, direct to reported speech, very tricky, please practice. Transformation questions also. All right, and for grammar, please review phrasal verbs and collocations. So if you have any questions, please feel free to share now in the chat. We're happy to hang around and answer your questions. In the meantime, I will also move on to share with you that we would like to share about our P5 Success Camp that we are launching at the Eden Academy this September holidays. So as each of the teachers, we were talking about our different subjects. If you feel a little bit like I'm not so confident about a certain subject and you would like more coaching and more support, we are here for you and we are happy to help. So here is an overview of the different things that we're covering for the different subjects. Okay, and a more detailed description of all of these is actually found on our website, which is in this QR code. If you would like to, you can give that a quick scan. Otherwise, it's quite easily accessible also on our website, edenacademy.com.sg. So this camp, for each of the subjects, it will be 3 hours across 2 days. And it will be in-person learning, so we'll be teaching you in person. It is offered at all 3 locations, Great World, Canberra Plaza, and I12 Katong. All right, the actual timing and the dates are also located at the website. Right, so we wanted to thank you very much for being here today and thank you for participating. I'm going to go back to the previous slide where you can see the camp schedule if you want more details there. Again, we are here for the next 5 to 10 minutes. Please feel free to unmute if you want to talk to us directly. If not, feel free to type your questions in the chat. We are here. We are happy to help you with your questions. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Hi.
Hi, Miss Jo.
Yeah, is there what's the camp fee amount?
Yeah, hang on now. We'll get the answer to you.
Actually, the answer is now typed out in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, Joe, you can actually refer to it.
Okay. Just to check also, is there any like trial lesson to go to assess the student?
For the camp, we unfortunately don't have a trial. It's really a short program whereby it's just 2 days. But the regular program for our subjects, we do offer trial lessons.
Okay, so I have to go down to one of the centers for
Yes, to arrange for it. Yes.
to arrange. Can I give a call to arrange?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay. Because
Definitely.
I heard I got called before, but like Monday and Tuesday you are off day, is it?
Yes,
So
we operate we are open, right, for lessons on Wednesday until Sunday.
Wednesday until Sunday. Okay.
Someone will contact you tomorrow, Miss Yo.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Miss Yo, my colleague is asking whether is there a preferred time to call?
Yeah, in the morning it's okay. I'm all right.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Maybe from the rest of our audience? If not, yeah, Ms. Yeo, we will get back to you. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you all also for taking the time on this evening to join us. So we hope to see you at the P5 Success Camps or at any of our centers where we have P5 classes ongoing also. Yeah, all three of us would be teaching. So hope to see you in class. Thank you so much. I think we will say good night to everyone now. Thank you very much.